Good morning, students. My name is Suvas Vora, Assistant Professor of Electrical Department at Swaminarayan Institute of Technology. So, in the previous topic, we can discuss about the disaster phases. It means there are the four type of disaster phases: mitigations, response, then recovery, and the last one is preparedness. Yes, the preparedness. Then after we can see that the what is the risk, and then after the electrical power utilizations when the disaster will be occurs. Now the today's topic is we can see the different type of some terminology, and then after the introductions of hazards or the hazards. So now the first terminology is hazards. Basically, hazard is the potentially damaging of the physical event or the phenomenon that the activity which may cause the losses of life, injury, property damage, social and the economic disruptions, and the environmental degradation. It means this one is the basic occurs for the hazards. Then after the virtuality is the set of the conditions and the process resulting from the physical, social, economical, environmental factors which increase the susceptibility of the community to the impact of hazards, so that vulnerability is considered for the physically, then social, economic, and environment factor will be considered at that time when to set of the conditions and the process of resulting. Now the next one is risk. Yes, we can already study what is the risk. Basically, the risk is probability of the harmful consequence and the expected loss resulting when or the from the interactions between the natural or human disasters and the vulnerable conditions. So risk is basically considerations and the basically calculations of the resulting from the disaster will occurs. Then after the physical vulnerability, it means the analyze impact of the event on assets such as the building, infrastructures, and agriculture. It means that if I consider the civil side or the building side and infrastructures and agriculture sides, we can discuss or consider that at that time the physical vulnerability will be considered. Now the social vulnerability is estimate the impact of event on the high vulnerability groups such as the poor, grouping capacity, status, and etc. will be help of the awareness of risk. And the last one is the economic. So the economic vulnerability is the potential impact on the hazards on economic assessment and the process. Basically, the business interruptions and the secondary the effects. So this one is the basic terminology of the hazards. Now we can listen the lot of time for the hazards. So now what is the hazards? First of all, we can start with the hazards. We can learn about the causes of harms. It has the potential to cause of harm is people, human activities, then properties, environmental, and some example of the hazards are earthquake, volcanize, cyclone, flood, and others such as event. So this one is cause is from to harm when the disasters and the hazards will be considered. So now we can think that are the hazards natural? So in a nowadays they have the different way of classifying the hazards. So one of the considerations, basically there are the three part will be considered: natural hazards, quasi-natural hazards, and technological. The first two one is natural hazards and quasi-natural hazards is related to the natural hazards. It means that if I consider the natural hazards such as the earthquake and flood arise from the purely natural process in the environment. It means the natural hazards which when disease or disasters is not in the human hands. The quasi-natural hazard such as smoke or desertification arise through the interactions of the natural process and the human activity. It means which hazards will be quasi natural when the impact of the human as well as the combinations of human and the environment or the natural. This one is the quasi natural hazards. And the last one is term technological. It means the man-made or the humanity hazard such as the toxicity of the pesticide or fauna, accidental release of the chemical or the radiations from the nuclear plant. These are the directly as a result of the human activities. So another example of the technical hazards is the corona. Corona is made by the humanity, and this one is the lot of people will die, and more than 2 crores people will affect this one. So these hazards will be called the technological or man-made hazards. So now we can see the two different words, but the meaning almost the same: the disasters and hazard. So now we can discuss about the difference between disasters and hazards. So that the difference between the disaster and hazards means the hazards is the situations when there is the threat to life, health, environment, and property. In other hands, the disaster is an the event that completely disturb the normal way of community. It brings on the human, economical, and environmental losses to be community which cannot bear on its own. It means that we can only consider that the three things: life, health, and environment or property. This one is the hazards, but the disaster means which one is the disturb in our whole lives, economic, and everything in the world on the earth. This one is called the disasters will occurs. The hazards are now we can consider that now the second one, the hazards are occurs at the place which has less populations, and disasters are mainly occurs at the overpopulated areas. It means we can see that The hazards is mainly occurs in the cities area, and the disaster one is the whole the earth. In the third one, the cause of the hazards negligence. It means the sum of the hazards will be neglected, but in the disasters is the result of the differential behaviors of the natural due to many conditions. It means that we can consider if the life or the health, for example the diabetes is considered for the hazards, but the earthquake is never we can negligible. So next one is hazard are natural and man-made phenomena that are the features of our planet and cannot be prevented. These hazards are treated as the disaster when they cause the widespread distortions of the property and the human life. It means the hazards is not more than affect our life from the disasters. And the last one is in their dormant state, the hazard just pose the threat to the life and the property. But in the disaster, once the hazards become the active and is no longer just a threat, it become a disaster. So we can say that in the last point, the hazards means in a short time process and short time considerations, but the disaster is the long life considerations. So this one is the basic difference between the hazards and disasters. And now the last topic from the chapters is the basically the relations between the disaster and development. After the disasters, they have the lot of development will be required. The after the disasters, the they can destroy the development inputs, and the development can increase the vulnerability of the disasters, and development program can be reduce the vulnerability. It means that if we can develop something when the disasters at that time the disaster is destroy this input, it means that there is one is affect our the economical and the others civil and the electrically destroyed sons. The next one is the development can increase the vulnerability of the disasters. So the when the disaster will be occurs, so there are the lot of vulnerability will be increasing, and the development program can be reduced the. So we know that in our Ahmedabad the lot of areas will be developing and the metro train will be established, but due to the disasters, it means the corona disasters at that time, this one is affect the development input and the reduce the development. So disaster can provide the development opportunity. How? So creating the social and political atmospheric of the assessment of charge, then highlighting the source of the underdevelopment and exacerbate the disasters, focusing international attentions and aids on the disasters area, and the recovery program should be designed. Recovery program should be designed when treating the areas of the risk, supporting the private and non-formal sectors, and enhancing the management training program. So this one is the relations between the disasters and development. It means that the disaster to destroy the disaster is to destroy the everything, but after the distortions or destroyed the everything, then after the lot of opportunity develop in the countries. So this one is the basic relations between the disasters and the development. So today's lectures we can discuss about the different terminology, then after the importance of the hazards, then after the difference between the disasters and the hazards, and the last one, disaster is related to the development. So these things will be done or covered with this topic. If any doubt about this topic or the any questions regarding this topic, you can also call me, and the query of this topic you can also send me the mail. My mail id and the phone number is seen your screen. Thank you.